Democrats are fighting back against another attempt by Republicans to roll back a part of Obamacare, pointing out that Republicans are complaining about a part of the law they actually helped create. Democratic Congressman Waxman, Levin, and Miller say the GOP's argument on insurance rules are hypocritical, and in a new Politico magazine op-ed, they accuse GOP leadership of hypocrisy. Some Republicans want to end certain protections for insurance companies during the rollout of Obamacare, which they call, quote, insurance bailouts. One idea is even to threaten a debt default if the rules aren't changed. But in Politico, the Democratic congressmen say Republican leaders are denouncing a model they created in 2003 to smooth out rate increases in prescription drug coverage under Medicare. Well, let's bring in the top Democrat on the Commerce Committee, Henry Waxman. He co-authored that article and is the 8th most senior member of Congress. Welcome.
Thank you. Pleased to be with you.
Great. I want to talk to you first about the CBO report, which, of course, everyone's talking about on the Hill. Your colleagues holding hearings today. Your reaction to this debate over where the labor market and the ACA intersect, and then anything else you want to add about the other ACA issue we just mentioned.
Well, the Congressional Budget Office didn't say people will lose their jobs. They said going into the future there will be some people who will not go into the labor market. You know, some people are in the labor market just to be able to get health insurance. They will need to do that anymore. But what the CBO did not take into consideration is that we'll have lower deficits because the health care costs will not increase as rapidly, and that that will help spur private investments and more jobs as a result. The Republicans just hate this law. They're doing everything they can since the very day that the president announced it to stop it from passing and now to undermine it. And we have voted, I don't know, over 45 times to repeal it on the House floor.
Yeah,
you
I've
have
heard
to
about
wonder
that.
why are they so obsessed with just repealing a law that is going to offer millions of people the chance to get health insurance, even though they might have pre-existing conditions where insurance companies denied them in the past. If they have ideas for correcting it or making it work better, let's hear about them. But now all they want to do is repeal it and scare people about it.
Yeah, and Congressman, you're hitting on the real issue, which is it a good faith policy debate, especially if there are ideas for amendments, or is it a constant re-litigation of whether this should be law?
Yes.
It is law. I understand your point there. I want to turn to the fact that you announced just last week that you are retiring from Congress after 40 years, and you wrote a pretty interesting op-ed that a lot of folks were talking about, sketching out how the progress in Congress is slow, but not as bad as some say. We're going to put up on the screen part of your timeline based on that op-ed. You talk about how from when you first came into office in '74, you were holding some of the first AIDS hearings in 1982. Then in the 80s, you were working on Medicaid expansion for a decade. It took all the way until 1990 to get something called the Ryan White AIDS Act, which many remember, named after a young man named Ryan White. And also the Clean Air Act, Nutritional Labeling and Education Act, you point to as legislative successes that were a long time coming. You held some of the first tobacco and nicotine investigations and hearings. We've been talking about that shift in the news today with CVS rolling back tobacco sales. CHIP. Tobacco regulation bill that President Obama signed in 2009, the Affordable Care Act, of course, in 2010. You can't see it, but we have up on the screen a fairly long timeline there. And explain to us your argument in that op-ed and that timeline.
Well, my argument is that Congress can get things done on a bipartisan basis, but it doesn't happen overnight. We need to sometimes recognize it's hard work and determination and looking for different combinations to bring people along. Right now it's discouraging because the Tea Party right-wing Republicans are quite extreme. They think compromise is a dirty word, and to talk to the Democrats they think is like complicity with the enemy. But it's so far out, it's so extreme a view that I think other Republicans are going to reject it. The Republicans are having a civil war right now, and if they get captured by the right-wingers, they're just going to become an extinct party.
Yeah, and Congressman, we're putting up on the screen there, just so you know, some of the older footage of of you as a young man, looking good and looking determined, and you've changed a little bit over the years, I'm sure you'd say. Definitely aged,
Yes.
right? We all age. But as Congress has aged, a lot of people argue there is something that has definitely changed for the worse. Congress is a different institution from when you arrived 40 years ago. In fact, when you look at net worth of the people in Congress, your colleagues, the Washington Post had an analysis a few years ago. It found a huge disparity. The median net worth of American households hasn't changed much over the past decades. It's about $20,000. For our viewers, it's that tiny red sliver on the left. But Congress's average median net worth has ballooned, more than doubled. Do you think, as you leave and you say some things are working, do you think this gap, this political inequality gap between our representatives and our citizens is a big problem?
The biggest problem is the top even half of 1%. They're getting so overly rewarded for their wealth and increasing their wealth, and the middle class is being pushed down. And we have this huge gap. It's not the Congress that are super rich. There really is a class of super rich people.
Congressman,
and the Republicans are going and trying to benefit them even more.
Congressman, let me push you on that a little bit. I think there's been a lot of discussion of that. The President spoke about that in the State of the Union. That's the large economy. But the question I'm trying to get you to engage on is whether it matters, whether the public should care that for some reason over the past several decades, the people who end up in Congress seem to be increasingly, unusually more wealthy than their constituents, even compared, as we showed, to just 25 years ago.
I think the people ought to worry about the views of their members of Congress, not their personal profile or their portfolio. You could have a low-income member of Congress take very right-wing, pro-wealthy positions and forget about the working people. And you could have people who are comfortable, and that's why they feel they can be in Congress, and fight for the working people. Franklin Roosevelt, of course, was one of the wealthiest families in the nation.
And last question, Congressman.
Worry about their views and what they're fighting for.
And we're out of time. Out of the bills that you have been involved with, which one are you most proud of as you think about your tenure?
I can't choose any one of them. The environment, the health issues, they're all important, and even ones that don't seem as the greatest magnitude still is very beneficial for the public, and that's why we need government, and that's why we need Congress to do its job in a bipartisan, effective way for the public interest.
Appreciate that. I appreciate you spending some time reflecting on your record and what Congress is up to. Congressman Waxman, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Absolutely. Now, just days after Radio Shack